Here in Europe, the European Union is pushing for the development of drone defense systems. It wants to set up a so-called drone wall along its eastern border following numerous airspace incursions by Russia. Drones have become a key Russian weapon in its war against Ukraine, and both the EU and NATO have been scrambling to respond. Officials are expected to lay out a roadmap to address that threat.
Russia is escalating its provocations of NATO, sending fighter jets into alliance airspace over Estonia and a swarm of drones over Poland. And so the routine meeting of NATO defense ministers takes on new urgency. The alliance must improve its air defense, especially in countering enemy drones.
NATO will implement a number of additional counter-drone measures that will build on and expand and accelerate our ability to counter drones.
Britain's Defense Secretary John Healey said the Kremlin must be left in no doubt that if NATO is threatened, it will act.
Putin's incursions into NATO territory are reckless, dangerous, and totally unacceptable. Deliberate or not, Putin is watching what we do.
To better protect NATO frontline states, Germany is also increasing its commitment.
We will contribute with patrol flights to protect the eastern flank. And the head of my Air Force tells me he is very proud to be able to say that the largest commitment of a European NATO state to protect Allied airspace comes from his Air Force.
But Ukraine has no such shield and continues to suffer Russian bombardments with increasing severity. This winter, as in previous years, Moscow is primarily targeting the energy infrastructure. That makes further arms deliveries to Ukraine all the more urgent. NATO's European members have agreed to buy from the US those weapons Ukraine has identified as the most important. But Rutte had to acknowledge just over half of the 32 allies have now committed to doing so. And just a day before this NATO meeting, new research showed European arms deliveries to Ukraine are actually down more than 40% since July.
All right, let's get more from DW's Terry Schultz in Brussels. Terry, it's a big day of meetings in Brussels, and we're expecting this so-called European defense roadmap to be presented. What's in it?
That's right, Paresh. Another big day of meetings at the EU, not a surprise. But this is a really big announcement for the European Union. To have a defense readiness roadmap really displays how the EU has moved from its origins as a peace project to an organization that has to be ready to militarily defend itself. And that's the goal. The headline out of this plan is going to be that Europe should be ready by the year 2030 to deter its adversaries, but also to respond militarily to any sort of attack. Now, I won't bore you with all of the details, but some of the big parts of this program are going to be 9 defense priorities. These are going to be things like countering drones, air and missile defense, maritime capabilities, artificial intelligence, and there are going to be some flagship projects. And that's where the real sort of drone wall concept is going to come in what they are calling Eastern Flank Watch, which will extend not just from the frontline states, but actually across the EU. They're going to be talking about other ways to protect their airspace. They're going to be talking about how to protect space. So this is really a big plan that we're going to be hearing about from Kaja Kallas later this afternoon.
I do want to talk to you in detail about the drone wall, but I'll come to that in a minute. But then just this defense readiness roadmap, I mean, correct my understanding, but wasn't the defense of Europe always a NATO project? And now you have this this defense readiness roadmap. Is there going to be a clash between the European Union and NATO here?
That's what we are all wondering and asking a lot. And the heads of both organizations, the EU and NATO, say that they are working very hard to coordinate. And in fact, Kaja Kallas last night, when she hosted defense ministers for dinner, she said that she had been talking with the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, the top NATO commander. So you can really tell that they're working hard not to duplicate. Nobody has the money or the time with Russia staging aggressions on the border constantly to really duplicate efforts. But you can hear in a lot of the defense ministers who are very conscious of their budgets that they don't want the same things purchased twice. So the way the EU explains it quite simply is that it will help those countries which are also members of NATO, 23 EU member states, to fulfill their capabilities to NATO, and those will also be put at the disposal of the EU. It's not exactly clear how command and control is going to work out, and that is certainly something that a lot of people are worried about.
So let's come back to the drone wall that you said is going to be part of this defense readiness roadmap. Now, Europe is obviously trying to strengthen its own capabilities, but is there a role here for other countries as well?
There's definitely a role. Ukraine does drones better than anyone else. It tests them every day. It depends on them for the lives of its people. So everyone is saying that Ukraine is going to be a really important, basically, instructor in how the EU goes about building its own drone defenses. They're going to get away from calling it a drone wall and move to something like the European Drone Initiative. So stay tuned for later this afternoon, Barash.
That sounds way better than drone wall. Terry Schultz in Brussels, thanks so much for that. And Germany's role in European defense is also on the agenda in Parliament here in Berlin today. Chancellor Friedrich Merz has been addressing German lawmakers ahead of next week's summit of EU leaders. Merz stressed the need for European strength and unity, including a strong Germany, in the face of what he called an increasingly hostile world. Here's some of what the German Chancellor had to say.
We want
to be able to defend ourselves so that we do not have to defend ourselves. And this will remain the case in the coming years because strength, deterrence and a consistent commitment to our democratic values means being a force for peace in Europe.
And DW's chief political correspondent Nina Haser is at the Bundestag, the German parliament, and has been listening to Merz's remarks. Nina, good to see you. Chancellor Merz stressing the need for strength, both from Europe and from Germany. But this is not the first time he's delivered that message, is it?
No, he hasn't. And it is a sentence that he keeps using, but also his defense minister and also military people you speak to here in Germany. We want to be able to defend ourselves so that we don't have to, because here the expertise seems to suggest that Vladimir Putin will be ready by 2029 to test an attempt on NATO territory if he wants to. And, Friedrich Merz again echoing that thought that we don't want to risk such a situation. And he started his speech by referring to Monday when the hostages were released in the Middle East and said that was only possible because international leaders came together and that the European Union can also be a power of peace if they work together and if they're militarily strong. He said again that Germany is not threatening anybody, the European Union is not threatening anybody, and neither is NATO, but we need to come back to some sort of European military strength in order to be taken seriously in this ever-changing world that is becoming more violent, more brutal.
And the Chancellor also talked about support for Ukraine. What did he say on that front?
Well, Friedrich Merz astonished quite a few people a couple of weeks ago when he said that he was now okay with the idea to use frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine boost the credit line that they've got, and that essentially international partners can supply Ukraine with funds that could help the country defend itself for years, if not decades, to come by using Russian frozen assets as well. That was applauded also on NATO's eastern flank, where many people had been pushing for that idea. And Germany was always very cautious. We remember his predecessor, Olaf Scholz, especially saying we need to be legally clear that this is not something where other countries might then risk turning away from Europe because of their fear that their assets could be confiscated. So apparently they found a way, and Friedrich Merz essentially said that he's sticking with that and that they'll discuss the details in Brussels later today.
Overall, Nina, defense isn't the only topic that Merz wants to discuss with fellow EU leaders, is it?
No, it's not. It's the economy, right? Germany is in a very bad shape, a third year of stagnation, and Friedrich Merz will probably use less flowery words when he travels to Brussels later today to call on the other European countries to agree that there needs to be less regulation, that there needs to be room for innovation, that Germany will probably also ask for certain exemptions from certain rules. So that is not going to be as cozy as today here in the Bundestag.
We'll leave it there for the moment. DW's chief political correspondent Nina Haza at the Bundestag. Thanks so much.